So what was my experience at COP? Would you like to hear that? That is exactly what I'm going to be sharing on this episode, so stay tuned. My name is Sellah Bogonko, co-founder and CEO Jacob's Ladder Africa, and this is Green Jobs Africa. I'd like to share my own three perspectives or three views, my personal takeaways when it comes to COP and what I experienced, but also what I think I would focus on if I was you when it comes to COP and the COP process in general. The first one is to understand that COP is a consensus-driven process. And this means that every COP that happens is like a board meeting that is held, and the stakeholders give their views, probably agree on different things, make decisions. And then in between this particular COP and the next one, there are parties that come together to negotiate on behalf of countries, on behalf of regions, to be able to make sure that whatever decisions were arrived at the COP meeting are broken down and implemented in a way that helps the different countries and feeds into subsequent reports. And so in many cases, you can only imagine that there in those kind of in the COP in the context of climate change, because it's a very it's an issue that affects all of us. When governments sit in that room, they're probably thinking, what's the most economically beneficial position they can take when it comes to the outcome? When private sector talks COP or climate change, they're thinking, what's the most money we can make out of it? Even if we're introducing technology, private sector is profit driven. So at the end of the day, it's about profit for them. When it comes to the civil society organization, they represent communities or champion social interests for the most part. And so you'll find indigenous communities that are trying to safeguard their own livelihoods on the one part, but also just the context within which they live. And so civil society safeguards community. And sometimes community does not necessarily go hand in hand with profit or hand in hand with policy in terms of what governments want or need. For example, the government will want to tax or build, for example, build a project somewhere like a power project, but then it's somewhere strategically located, it's good and beneficial for the country, but then at the end of the day, there are people that live there, they've lived there all their lives, and then you have to be able to, and so it means that the government has to relocate them. And so there are all these social dynamics that come into play that have to be considered. And so the process of arriving at one decision means that you've taken care of the private sector and given them a reason to come to the table. You've taken care of public sector in terms of governments and given them a reason to come to the table. And even amongst governments, they may not necessarily have the same objective. For example, why fossil fuels or what has arisen as a term from this particular COP, petro states, which are the petrol producing or oil producing states, they would want to defend their position because and insist on phasing down energy or phasing down fossil fuels because they rely on that, and that's the basis on which they've economically developed. But on the other hand, the ones that have been affected by climate change will say, no, you've already developed based on fossil fuel. It's translated to climate change. It's affecting us, and we as a country need you to change or to eliminate the reliance of whatever gives you economic advantage. And so you see how there can be a bit of a challenge, and it can be an arduous task to be able to arrive at just one conclusion. And so there's some things that are not as contentious, but there are other things that will definitely be contentious. And so the appreciation of the process of COP will give you an understanding that the arrival at one point means that there are many considerations that have to be taken and many things that have to be considered. And so at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a very simple process, but it is a process that needs to be done. And so how do we then get to the point of agreeing or arriving at a solution that helps everyone to be able to move forward in terms of making sure that everyone's interests are represented as much as possible, but at the end of the day that people feel that they are contributing towards addressing the issue of climate change, because there is a willingness, only that there are other issues that come up. And so from my perspective, to address that particular one, we have to be able to be mindful, be conscious of the interests of different people and be able to address them more strategically. And this is in a bid to be able to move forward. Because like I said, it is extremely contentious. And so like any other negotiations or any other bargains that have to be done, there has to be strategic approaches to it to be able to remove the obstacle at the end of the day. And in my view, that could be achieved in different ways, whether it's, making sure that there's a funding, for example, that comes from the petro states towards the loss and damage fund, like that has been proposed in the past, or just different mechanisms that would help make sure that we are moving forward at the end of the day. My second point is this. Many people do not know that COP is not necessarily just the main meeting that happens, that is always highlighted in terms of the one thing that comes out that is constantly pointed out in the media. For example, from COP28, the energy issue, the fossil fuel issue. That was not the only thing that was happening at COP. There were many side events. In my view, there were probably thousands of side events that took place at COP, and not just within the environment of COP. Like I said, 80,000 people in one place is a big deal, and not everyone goes into those closed door meetings where the negotiations happen. So there are many other side events that happen. And for I, who was privileged to attend an average of 6 side events every single day, you can see that there are people that are moving the needle. There are private sector that are putting in money behind ideas and solutions that are actually making a difference. There are young people that are doing amazing stuff within their communities. There are companies that have invested in like groundbreaking technology to address the issues, for example, of carbon dioxide removal, like I said earlier. There are people that are investing in new energy solutions to be able to introduce another way of addressing or introducing renewable energy into areas that may not necessarily have the climate, in the sense that they don't have the solar, the wind, or the favorable conditions that we have, especially in Africa. And they're being able to, try out those solutions. There are people that are looking at the issue of jobs as we are, but from a different angle in terms of talent. The increased push towards sustainability is creating amazing opportunities. And there are people that are leveraging those opportunities to create businesses for themselves and jobs for other people. And so don't get caught up in the noise or in the buzz around the issues that come up. Those are important issues, and those are global issues, and they will definitely affect every single one of us. For example, the loss and damage fund will definitely be a great thing for the global south. But then beyond that, there are other things that are happening, and there are good things that are happening. So please do get to know and get interested in the side events or in the other things that people are doing. There are other people, for example, in academia. We had the privilege of co-hosting a side event on green jobs in partnership with the Yale University International Leadership Center at the Yale University. And there were many universities at that place as well who've introduced curriculum. So while we say in Africa that we may not have the curriculum, there are other countries that are having curriculums or developing innovative ways of delivering the issue of climate literacy to their population. Things that can be adopted as well in Africa. I mean, it was great to hear what Nigeria, while you think that they are struggling with fossil fuel, they're actually beginning to introduce renewable energy in a very strategic way, and hopefully that the leadership can push through the ideas that they've come up with. There was discussions around policy and how policy is critical when it comes to addressing the issue of climate literacy, but also the creation of jobs and also creating the right environment when it comes to investments. There was a lot that was happening. There was even conversations, for example, around the nexus between health and climate, and different statistics that show you that climate is definitely affecting every single sector. I didn't even know there was a nexus between astrology and climate, and there are people that are doing and coming up with innovative ways of leveraging that technology to address the issue of climate change. Technology was featuring quite a bit, massive pavilions that were showcasing what different countries and different organizations are doing to address the issue of climate. Financial institutions that have amazing solutions and packages to be able to get their young people and different sort of like categories of their population to come up with to access finance to help them address the different issues around climate change within their country. the list is endless. One of the other side events that I attended was on local governments. There was a whole dedication of a local governments pavilion sponsored by Bloomberg, which is an amazing platform that gave different subnational units opportunities to come and share what they're doing in addressing the issue of climate change. We had our own governors speaking on what they're doing to address the issue of climate change and hearing from different countries, developed and underdeveloped or developing countries as well. And it was great to be able to get ideas, but also learn from what other people are doing. I could go on and on, but the point is, don't get caught up in the global conversation alone. It's good to be aware of that, and because that report, again, like I said, affects everyone, but there are many other people that are doing amazing things out there, and that was featured in the side events. I think there are many links that also featured side events, so if you can, just search on the internet, you'll find a few of them that showcase their events live or live streamed their events. So my third takeaway from COP is, on the one hand, it's been called a festival of broken promises, which means every year people gather to just listen to commitments, but no action follows after that, which is unfortunate because, like I said, the opportunity that COP provides is a platform that allows countries to agree and chart a direction for how to address the issue of climate change. And the leaders that sit in those rooms or influence the direction are, in my view, responsible for the outcomes. And sometimes when you hear the kind of conversations that come out of there, especially on the negotiations and the pushback and the reason why one country would refuse to take a stand in support of, say, the loss and damage fund, or they have their own reasons. And like I said, climate change is very political. But at the end of the day, it was great to see that while the leaders have their place, there are other leaders that are emerging, and those leaders are leading the way and doing something at their own level. And those leaders, like I said, are feature from civil society organizations, young people, academia. And so my encouragement is, don't stop doing what you're doing. Policy will catch up. Sometimes, like it's been said before, policy catches up after technologies have been implemented in most cases. And so for the young people, for the amazing people that are putting in a lot of effort, time, and mind into addressing the issue of climate change, my admonition to you is, don't stop. Because sometimes that's how we get change going. It starts, we have to create pressure points from a different area in order for the leaders to come on board. And so those were my 3 takeaways when it comes to COP, my own view and experience of what COP was like, because we still have a few days left. It would be great to hear as much representation as possible. But like I said, I'd love to buttress this point, that while that report is a guiding light in terms of where countries are going and how nations will be able to distill it in terms of their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, and how they will affect you and I in our respective countries. And so while the Global Stocktake report is what everyone is waiting for, there are many other opportunities that we have as leaders in our own rights, regardless of who you are, whether you're a young person or an academician or a private sector person, or just someone who's interested in climate in general. Like I said, that's going to be a policy. It's definitely going to affect the NDCs going forward, which are nationally determined contributions. And those are the countries' commitment when it comes to how they will contribute towards whatever goals are set in the IPCC report or in the Global Stocktake report for this particular one. You have an opportunity to do whatever you can, wherever you are, with whatever you have. And so you don't have to wait for that report to know or to figure out what to do. Start where you are, and definitely you'll end up somewhere, and in the process align to the outcome of this particular COP, and address the issue of climate change in general. Perhaps there could be technology that has not yet been invented that could help us all accelerate towards decarbonization, and you could be the person to come up with that idea. So you don't have to wait for the outcome of this report, is my emphasis. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Do you have questions, comments? What was your perspective of COP? What is your view? Whether you attended or not, I'd love to hear what you think of COP. Do these meetings actually make sense to you or not? Do you think they're a waste of time, or do you think that they're contributing towards moving the issue of global decarbonization forward? My name is Sellah Bogonko, co-founder and CEO Jacob's Ladder Africa, and this is Green Jobs Africa.